Hey guys, welcome to Dice and Destiny and the patch 8.9 World of Tanks test server. I'm here looking at some of the tanks that I haven't had a chance to look at before, and I'm looking at now. One of them is this thing, T28 Prototype, Tier 8 American Turret Tank Destroyer. It's a very odd tank destroyer in that every single tank destroyer, or turreted tank destroyer before it, from the M8A1 up to T28-2, was fast, rapid firing gun, no armor. So, M8A1, yeah, fast, rapid firing gun, no armor. T49, fast, rapid firing gun, no armor. Hellcat, fast, absolutely no armor, rapid firing gun. T25/2, rapid firing gun, fast, no armor. Then you get the T28 Prototype. Let's look at the stats. 1150 health. That's not a lot of health. If we look at something like the... Here we go. I'm looking at this thing, T4485, which is a tier 7, which is a tier lower than the T20 Prototype, has exactly the same amount of health. So, this thing doesn't have a lot of health. I do have an ISU-152. That thing has 1010. Usually tier 8 tank destroyers don't have a lot of health. It's a pretty heavy machine. Mine weighs in at 66, nearly 67 tons. But here's where it becomes a culture shock to the system of the American turreted tank destroyers. It has a 510 horsepower engine on a nearly 67 ton tank. Oh, that's not good. This thing has such a bad power to weight ratio. I do not know what it is, but it's bad. Very, very bad. 18 kilometers per hour. What else do I know that's slow? Oh, this thing, the Sturmpanzer Bison, is faster. And this thing is ridiculously slow. I mean, it's sluggish. And this thing is just horrible. Traverse speed is pretty bad as well. 20 degrees per second, it's very slow turning. Skip the armor and the gun for the moment because those are two things that make the T28 Prototype special. Turret traverse is very bad as well, but this you are used to because here on the Hellcat, here we go. If we look at the Hellcat's turret, this one has a 16-degree traverse. So at least it's 2 degrees better than the Hellcat's turret, but it's still slow. View range, pretty good, 380 meters, standard 745 meter signal range. Now, the gun and the armor. It is pretty well armored. It's 203 at the front of the hull and the turret. Let's look for it at the turret still. It's 127 at the sides turret, and it's nice and rounded and sloped and bouncy, and the rear is 101 millimeters thick. Just to put this into perspective, this thing has more armor at the rear of the turret than the Tiger has at the front of the hull. Now looking at the sides and rear of the hull armor, 50 millimeters at the side, 50 millimeters at the rear. Do not get outflanked in this thing. You will die. Now, sticking with the armor for a moment, it has problems with the armor because, yeah, it's 203 millimeters thick at the front, but it's not very well sloped. That's maybe a 15-degree slope at the front of the hull. Front of the turret is very tough, mainly because there isn't much of the front of the turret showing except these little bits, and there isn't a lot of them. But again, like the hull, they only slope back 15 degrees, but they're tiny little weak spots. And if you miss them, you're either going to hit this and just bounce right off, hit that, bounce right off, or just hit the gun mantle and just not penetrate at all. Front of the hull, you don't have options shooting at. Because there's that you generally won't put shocks here in this machine gun port. There are these two periscopes. I do not know if they're weak spots. They just might be observation devices. Oh, and don't go shooting at the lower releases of a T28 prototype. It's very well sloped. Look at that. You're not going to hit that on purpose. It's more or less an accident. Now, here's one of the problems that the T28 prototype has with this armor. Because the side armor is only 50mm thick, you can't angle the tank very effectively without exposing shots into your side. So, angling this thing is very, very tricky. You don't generally, here we go, let's go into this sort of view. You don't want to be angling the T28 prototype more than that. Just to make sure this stays in all bounce zone, make that all thicker. Expose a bit more than that, something like this, they'll just put shots through your side. Simple as that. And this is the first American turreted tank destroyer that can't get a full turret rotation. I think it's 270 degrees. Basically, gun will point about that far that way, that far that way. Can't shoot behind this engine deck thing. Okay, so one thing we haven't looked at yet is the gun. Or rather, the guns. Choice 3. And here's another problem. It's a horrible grind because you will not have that T5E1 gun unlocked. You will have that T15E2 gun, but here's the problem. You get that gun, it's basically the same gun on the T25/2. I don't like the T25/2. It has a kind of meh gun. And now you get on this thing. Ooh, that's not good. This T15E1, you will not have, unless you go down this line, unless you get the T28. And that gun is basically the same gun that you get on the T29. But then you get this gun, the 120mm AT gun T53, and it's a pretty good gun, I'll give them that. Rate of fire is alright. You'll probably be pumping a shot out every 10 seconds with that gun. It has pretty good penetration for a tier 8. I mean, that's a very good penetration, 248mm. That's usually good enough to penetrate whatever you're shooting at. Damage is getting there. It's up there with some of the big tank destroyers, 400 damage. It's not very accurate though, and that's another problem with the T28 prototype. You can't really snipe because that's almost 0.4 accuracy, but a pretty quick aiming time, 2.3 seconds. Now, equipment. Gun rammer. You're definitely going to want a gun rammer on this thing, because you want to spend the least amount of time reloading in this thing so you can do as much damage as possible in the next shot. You want a camo net, just to help, you know, make it so you can't get detected. I mean, it's a pretty big machine. Let's compare it to something else I have in my garage. Let's compare it to a Tiger 2. It's not that much smaller than a Tiger 2. If anything, it's around the same size. But that'll help. Then the third equipment, I've gone for coated optics. And here's why I've gone with coated optics, because you do not want to be sitting around in this thing. You do not want to stop, because if you stop, you're just going to fall behind the action, because you only go at 18 kilometers per hour. Now, let's look at crew skills. I've gone with recon on the commander, gunner I've given repairs, on the driver I've given clutch braking, and the last two loaders, on the radio operator and the loader, I've given camo. Reason I went for recon is just to help get that view range up. For repairs, I just did that just so it can get its tracks up a bit quicker. Clutch braking because it turns so slowly. And then camo for obvious reasons. But it's a pretty good machine actually. But here's another problem. Artillery loves shooting at this thing because it's so slow. They can't miss. Plus it's a pretty big target. And because your sides are so incredibly paper thin, if they manage to land a shot next to you, they're probably going to do serious damage and blow your tracks off. But here's the biggest problem against this thing with artillery. It's that open hatch. If you get shot in there, you're dead. Tier 5 and up artillery will one-shot you by landing a shell in here, if they can hit there. If they manage to land a shot here, they're probably going to wreck your engine. So, that is the T28 Prototype Tier 8 American turreted tank destroyer. Next video I'm probably going to be doing is of this thing. The Doom Turtle, the T95. If you want a T95 review, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you later.